Many thanks for joining us. As always, we put the spotlight on government policies, developments within and outside Nigeria, giving you a perspective that is most definitely going to shape your opinions about topical issues. On Sunday Politics, we also give you an opportunity to be part of the conversation as we try to get varying opinions and thoughts about the topical issues of the day. Speaking of topical issues, Nigeria has been grappling with an endless economic crisis that has seen millions of Nigerians continue to groan and decry the state of affairs in the country. The soaring food inflation has continued to hit a lot of Nigerians across board, especially given the inefficiency of some of the government moves as well as measures that have been put in place to address this particular situation. The most populous black nation in the world and the largest economy on the African continent is facing an uphill task of trying to navigate these very difficult waters as the unease within the population is continuing to tell, especially as we anticipate the nationwide protests by the organized labor, the NLC to be precise, in the days to come. Over the past week, we've heard from the Nigerian Senate President, who has accused the subnationals of doing very little to address and ameliorate the pains of Nigerians across board. But also, we heard from one of the governors who spoke and said nothing of such has been agreed with. And of course, he's speaking as a secretary to the Nigeria Governors Forum, saying that none of that arrangement was made and the states have not been given any special funds to address the current economic climate in the country. Amidst all the blame games, Nigerians are struggling to try to understand what comes next and for how much longer they would have to bear the consequences of the current economic situation in the country. Joining me tonight on the program is one who is all too familiar with what it means to be a Nigerian and, of course, what the current situation of the state of the nation is. A former senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, a critic, a writer, and of course, a public commentator. Senator Shehu Sani is joining us live tonight from Kaduna, from his residence, and he'll be adding value to the conversation on the various aspects of what is currently the story of millions of Nigerians across board. But just to give you a sense of all of the issues that we're going to be discussing tonight, we're just going to play you some clips of the Senate President's submissions regarding what is currently ongoing and what the federal government alongside the legislature is trying to do to address all of these situations. And also, we get to hear the counter narrative from the governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde, who countered that assertion that the states have been given 30 billion naira to help address the current economic climate in the country, especially with regards to food inflation. We'll also get to hear from one of the lawmakers who has an opinion or two about what the government may not be doing to address the volatility with foreign exchange, which is at the heart of some of the economic situations in the country today. Take a look.
Most of those sponsored protests are not aware of the kind of efforts being made by this Senate to tackle the situation, together with the joint management team of the federal government of Nigeria. And I must say that unverified report has it that each of the state governments in the last few months have received additional 30 billion from the Federal Inland Revenue Service outside their normal allocations, from the Federation account, outside their normal allocations, to assist them in ameliorating the food situation. So we believe that every state government should utilize the funds so received towards ensuring that food is available. About 30 trillion waste and means not what President Tinubu can bring. This Senate will not rubber stamp anything that we feel is not in the interest of Nigerians. Yes. And that is the reason why we are discussing. Am I right or wrong? Yes. Those who are in support of what the Senate President is saying, say aye. Aye. Those again say nay. So the expenses that we don't have details put us in the indebtedness that we have today, and therefore has affected even the ability of government to provide essential needs and services for the public. That we need to look into those things.
If you want to play politics, we'll keep quiet and say, let it slide. But I'm not going to let this slide. FIRS cannot give money to any state. So if a Senate President, number 3 citizen in this country, will say on verified report, people are looking at us as leaders. This is the period that we're supposed to give confidence to our people. It is not a period to start playing politics or to start looking for scapegoats. We need to engage with our people. If our policies are not working, we need to listen to them and amend. So if the number 3 citizen says, this is an unverified report, why does he need to say it then? Does that give confidence to our people, or does it solve the problem of hunger and anger in our land?
Well, let's bring in our guest. Senator Shehu Sani represented Kaduna Central in the 9th Assembly and he's joined us on the program tonight from his residence in Kaduna. Senator, good evening and thank you very much for joining us on the program. Reacting to this particular development, you had posted on your X platform to say that Nigerians should hold their governors accountable, especially after those comments by the Senate President. Now we've heard a counter narrative from the governor of Oyo State. What are your reactions to this two very polarizing views about the same issue?
Thank you very much for having me in your program. Well, first and foremost, we need to remind ourselves that Nigeria is a federation. And you have 3 tiers of government, the federal, state, and the local government. And resources that accrue to the state are shared into 3. You have the federal share, the state share, and the local government share. And the situation we face in the country today as a result of the economic policies and reform programs of Asuwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu, people are in a very difficult situation. And 2 things are responsible for it. First is the fact that subsidy has been removed, and subsidy has been something we have been benefiting from for the last 5 decades. And naturally, inflation will be what it is, and then the prices of goods and so many things. Now, then the withdrawal of subsidy on the Naira, because Naira was being subsidized by money from central bank, and that has been going on for decades too. This accumulated and led us to where we are. Now, the government has made a decision to alleviate the problems by sharing money and palliatives at all levels. So it appears people are more interested in holding the federal government to account, which they should. But what I said was that there's the need to hold the state and also the local government to account, because money are also being shared to them. And if you look at what is happening in the country today, of all the 36 governors in the country, none has come to oppose the removal of subsidy, because the removal of subsidy means money being given to them. The federal allocation FAC has risen from 600 to 700 billion that used to be under President Muhammad Buhari. Now they are getting almost 1.2 trillion monthly. So what I said was that we should hold the states and the local governments to account as much as we hold the federal government to account. Senator Akpabio, the Senate President, has made a claim that 30 billion was shared to all the governors. Well, to me, I thought after this claim, there will be multitudes of denial. But all that we have seen was a denial by one governor. So what happened to the 35 governors? Now, that is one. And again, I want to know why, if you have not been given 30 billion, then how much were you actually given? So it appears there is some form of opacity in the way public funds have been disposed to address the problems of this hardship. And I can remember there was a member of House of Representatives some few months ago. Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, does the speculation not compound this whole situation? Because it appears we're digging deep into this blame game, because it looks deflective. The Senate President is saying the federal government is doing its best alongside the legislature. Nigerians should look elsewhere, look at the sub-nationals. And now we understand the sub-nationals are also trying to deflect, saying, listen, we've not been given any extra dime, or as speculated by the Senate President. How does this in any way help Nigerians, in your view?
Well, to me, the denial of one governor out of 36 has still not answered the question. I want to see at least 10 to 15 governors coming out and say they have not been given money. Then I believe. That is one. Secondly, if you were not given 30 billion, were you given 29 billion or 28 billion or 26 billion? How much were you actually given? Let us know. So these are issues. You see, the situation we find ourselves today, the people cannot pay their rent. They can't pay the school fees of their children. They can't eat 3 square meals in a day. They can't transport themselves from one place to another. Life has become so tough and brutal. The danger of this is that it creates a charged atmosphere for a national uprising. And the subnationals should know that if this spark turns out to be a bushfire, it's going to consume, it will spare no one. It's not going to spare you because you're a governor or you're a local government chairman. Everyone will pay the price for it. That is why monies that are being given for palliatives, for addressing the problems of hardship, please make sure that you do it. I can see some governors are doing their best. You see them sharing sacks of rice, beans, and so many foodstuffs being given. And, well, many governors are simply silent. Even the last palliative that was shared, when 5 billion was shared to them, you see in some states, you see them sharing 1 bag of rice for almost 500 people. And in some states, you see the governor sharing 1 bag of rice per lady and per person. So they should know the level to which this country is today. What led to the situation in Sudan? Please go back and see. There was protest against bread, the rise in cost of bread. There was protest against the cost of living. From there, it turned out to be a national mass uprising and a revolution. And the country now has found itself in a state of civil war. Please, poverty, hunger is a serious problem. It's inflammable. If care is not taken, it's going to go out of control. There is no army, no police, no security apparatus of the state can contain a people who are determined to rise up and fight. And we have to be very careful about this. It's not about tinubu. Money is being shared to people at all levels. They have to bring it out and address the problems of poverty in this country.
Recently, the Africa Development Bank put out a report that got a lot of people talking across the continent, because it identified 4 countries in particular. The largest economy, which is Nigeria. It also identified Ethiopia, Kenya, and Angola as those countries that are on the verge of social unrest because of the socio-economic situation in the country. Knowing what we know about the little pockets of protest that we've had, whether it's in Niger State, whether it's in Kano, whether it's in Oyo, whether it's in different parts of the country that, according to some of the people in government, are politically sponsored, how concerned are you that these projections could become a reality, going by the current trajectory of what the government is doing to ameliorate the pains the Nigerians have been complaining about for the past few months?
You see, hunger doesn't need any instigation. Once people cannot feed themselves, they can't feed their children. They have found life so hard and tough for everyone. You don't have to instigate them or sponsor them to come out to the street and fight or to protest. They will naturally protest. But you create an atmosphere for which political forces can exploit for their own political ends. That ones do happen. So I do not believe that in some ways politicians, the opposition are sponsoring this protest. But already there is a charged atmosphere. And people are saying that they need food. Civil servants are saying they need increase in wages. And farmers are saying they need more supplies of farming equipment and other things for them to be able to provide a long-term solution. We should be very careful. Economic reforms all over the world and in history are very tough. Margaret Thatcher in 1979-80 tried to reform the economy of Britain, and there was national uprising and people suffered, but it went out fine later. Mahathir Mohamad in Malaysia, he did it. Sukarno in Indonesia, he did it. Even Deng Xiaoping, when he took over power in 1979, he introduced tough reforms that led to where China is today. The point is that there is people suffering for reform should come with positive result and should not take long. If you remember, Nigerians were patient with Buhari for 8 years. What became of it? So this time around, the pressure, the criticisms that are coming up should be addressed by providing the necessary facilities, foodstuffs, and whatever that will be done to ease the hardship of people while making sure that the result of this reform doesn't take eternity to achieve. That is my view. Right. If you check what happened at the Arab Spring, from the protests that started with Muhammad Bouazizi in Tunisia, it's all about poverty, it's all about unemployment, it's all about human suffering. It was a fire that consumed Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Syria, and is still raging in some places. So we should be very careful, because when you have hunger, the next is a revolution.
Right. Senator, let's talk about transparency and accountability, which you talked about. Because for most Nigerians, the government, whether it's federal or state, are not being honest about addressing these problems. They're not being transparent about what's in the books. As you stated, if the 30 billion was not given, how much was given? We remember at the initial stage when subsidy was removed, the federal government had planned to give each state 5 billion. Even at that point, a lot of people were asking the question, why does Lagos get the same amount of money a state like Zamfara or Jigawa is going to get? Because the poverty burdens vary from state to state. But what is your sense of what we're hearing from the government? Whether it's the release of 42,000 metric tons of grains free to the masses, there seems to be a disconnect between what the government is saying, what the government is doing, and how much of it the population actually believe is geared towards making the situation better.
You see, economic reforms are necessary for a country like Nigeria, but it should be done in such a way that there will be a balance between reforms and also addressing the consequences of reforms. There are two issues here that led us to where we are today. The first is that for decades we have been subsidizing prices of petroleum products, and then life was easy and relatively comfortable for many people. The second is that we have been subsidizing the value of our naira. Now the first one, subsidizing petroleum product. We were subsidizing in millions, then it becomes billions, then hundreds of billions, and then trillions. Towards the end of Buhari administration, we were borrowing to subsidize. Now, the same thing happens with the value of our naira. Over $1 billion is used every quarter, according to what they say, to show up the value of the naira. Now, you ask yourself, if you have reached a point where you have to borrow and eat, you borrow from Musa, borrow from Abubakar, then from James, then from Abdullahi, then Adeleke, there will be a time to which the money will not be given to you. So there's nothing wrong with addressing that problem. But what is wrong is that before the government embarked on that, there could have been a clear and detailed strategy on how to deal with consequences. But it appears that there was none. And to be fair to President Tinubu, before he came to power, he has said it several times in his campaign that he's going to remove subsidy. So maybe those who voted were either asleep or they were deaf or couldn't hear what he was saying, but it was very clear that he's going to remove subsidy. And if subsidy is removed, that's the consequence. Government all over the world subsidize. But before you subsidize with money. Buhari's administration led us to where we are today. They were printing money, they were stealing money, they were sharing money to themselves, and they were borrowing money indiscriminately. This is the price we are paying for our silence, for our complicity.
Senator, hasn't that been the trend?
But it is not a Buhari that was, because when Buhari was in power, when Buhari was there, he has always referred to them. So now is the time to refer to him too. This is what happened under his government. And the choice that this president has is to continue along that trajectory, or he should do something different. But if you are going to do something different, you should know that there are consequences. And this is the consequences. People are standing up to protest, coming out to protest for nothing, not for political reason, but for the fact that they cannot feed their families. They don't have anything. If you have a 30,000 minimum wage, what can you buy with it? So at least these are issues. The government before, those period of time before handover, this was the time to which all these issues could have been articulated. But nothing is being done. So I believe that at least for now, the demands that people are making should be done. And governors, local government chairmen know it very well that if this fire rages, nobody is going to be spared. So don't think that you can go to Abuja, collect federal allocation, change it to dollar, and do what you want to do with it. There must be a country before you build a comfort around yourself, a fortress around yourself. If this country go into pieces, you will not be there. You will not be there. You will not survive it. Your family will not survive it. This is the only country we have.
You talked about how economic reforms usually come at a price. Are you optimistic that 8 to 9 months down the line, we're about to start reaping the rewards? Because that's what the promise, that's what they keep saying. People in power, especially at the federal government level, keep saying, listen, there's light at the end of the tunnel. But Nigerians, as you can imagine, are running out of patience. Are you confident in these reforms? And do you see a light at the end of the tunnel if things persist or continue this way?
Well, I think we have a problem, and for now. The problem is that if we remove subsidy and we're having a lot of money, I expect the government, and when I say government, I mean the federal and state, to sit down and say, we have such amount of money as a result of removal of subsidy. What do we do with it? There are 3 issues that are supposed to be invested. This money is supposed to be invested. One is power. Second is transportation, which is infrastructure. And the third should be industry or agriculture. But what we are doing now is we got the money and we are sharing it to state governors. And the problem is not solved. People are suffering, governors are getting more money, and governors are keeping quiet, and the measures has been sent against President Tinubu and his cabinet, and the atmosphere is charged, and people want to protest. So this is the situation which we are in today. How can you remove subsidy and stop subsidizing Naira? Money has accrued to you. You don't have specific economic sector to which you want to pump in that money and address that problem. If you are spending money on agriculture, you know that in the next 2 to 3 years, Nigeria is self-sufficient in that aspect. If you are spending money on power, you know that I will expect more megawatts in the next 2 to 3 years. Nigeria will be better. If you are spending money on infrastructure, but that's not the case. Governors are being shared money, and they are keeping quiet, and they are denying. Well, if they are not giving 30 billion, we want to know how much were you giving? And I think there is a need for transparency in this issue too. Because if there's no transparency, because the sacrifices of Nigeria, it's the poor that are sacrificing. The people in the upper strata of the society are virtually not sacrificing. And if this sacrifice is one-sided, people have the right to raise objection.
Right. If you have to put a percentage on it, how much should Nigerians put the responsibility, the burden of responsibility, the burden of action towards addressing this issue on the state, and how much of it should be on the federal? Because some of these reforms are quite structural in nature regarding the borders, for instance, where some people are saying, even if it's as a stopgap measure, the federal government should consider reopening the borders to allow certain food commodities come in, which will help crash the food crisis, food inflation that we're dealing with at the moment. How much of this do you put on the federal government, and how much of it do you put on the states?
Well, the percentage of blame that should go to the three tiers of government will go with the percentage of how much money is being shared. If federal government takes 49% of the federal revenue, their blame should be 49%. If the state takes 30% of the federal revenue, then their blame should be 30%, and local government should be 20%. So it depends, your percentage will be on how much amount of money you're getting. Now look at this about opening of borders. Now, you see, it's unfortunate that a country like Nigeria, as big as we are, other countries that have surrounded us are supposed to be afraid of us. They are the ones that are supposed to close down their borders so that we don't dominate their economy. We're supposed to be the ones that will produce and invade their market and take over their market. It's like an elephant standing very close to a rat. An elephant is being afraid of a rat. He's protecting his house against a rat. We are supposed to invest money from subsidy in agriculture. We are supposed to spend money from subsidy in power, on power. We are supposed to spend subsidy on money on infrastructure. We should have a clear direction. This is what we want to do. Not share money and achieve nothing. No governor is opposed to removal of subsidy. And senators and reps that are opposed to removal of subsidy and other things are not audible. During our time, we had the courage, the boldness to stand up and tell the president that this is wrong and this is right. But the rubber stamp mentality of Nigerian legislators is leading the country to peril, because they want to please the executive. They want to please the president. They don't want to be targeted. They don't want to lose their position. They don't want to tell the truth. They don't want to face the consequences. That is why you find out that whatever the executive does is with the approval and the imprint of the legislature, Senator, and also the governors. Yeah, Senator, we need to get these things right.
Interactive session with the financial the people calling the shots as far as the Nigerian economy is concerned. They did have the Minister of Finance and Economy. They had the Minister of Budget and National Planning, the FIRS, the CBN Governor, all the people that are instrumental towards addressing the policy side of the issue that we're faced with right now. The Nigerian Senate, as well as the House of Representatives, has several engagements with them. Why is that not enough to suggest that, listen, they're also trying to represent by keeping the government accountable, the executive arm of government at least?
Okay, you see, if we said all those people who are meeting, then it is a normal ritual. You meet, you discuss, you exchange ideas, and then you come up with strategy. But whatever meetings of experts that has been done, whatever conversation, whatever decision taken, can only be assessed by the result we have seen on the ground. More money to the state and more poverty to the people in the states. More money to local government and more poverty to people in the local governments. So what are we discussing? All what I'm saying is that this reform should have a target and should have a period to which the dividends will start yielding itself. And you can't stay endlessly, you can't sit down and say reform will go on till eternity. And clock is ticking. And I think why people are not patient with Tinubu is for the fact that they have wasted their patience with Buhari. And Buhari has led them to where we are today. So today, President Tinubu has a constitutional mandate and duty to reset and reconfigure Nigeria politically and economically, and he has to do it. The suffering of people of this country must be addressed. And people also need to understand, generally, that whatever is our opposition to the government of the day, we still need the country to remain united, and for all of us. Look at what happened. Sudan could have preferred a poverty than the war which they are confronted with. So, in a fragile state like ours, both in governance and in opposition, there must be that consciousness that there must be a nation before anything, and the nation comes first.
Right, okay. On that note, we're going to take a quick break, Senator. You're watching Sunday Politics on Trust TV. We're back in just a moment to hear a lot more of the Senator's thoughts on the state of affairs. Plus, you get to have an opportunity to join the interaction. If you have a thought, a viewpoint, or a question perhaps that you would love the Senator to ask or to address, feel free to be a part of it. More on that after the break. Join us again. Welcome back to the program. You're watching Sunday Politics on Trust TV. The conversation is on the state of the nation. The current reality is that Nigerians are very much unhappy about a variety of issues around security, around the economy, which has inundated households across the country. We've seen some of those households absorb the shocks rather in a very uncomfortable manner, and it has manifested into pockets of protests in different parts of the country. And in the week to come, or particularly this week, the NLC has organized a 2-day nationwide protest to further double down on some of those expressions. As always, you can follow us on our social media platforms to catch up with the conversation on the go. We've been in conversation with a senator who has represented Kaduna Central in the 9th Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Senator Shehu Sani has been providing us with insights into some of the issues that is dominating the polity across the country today. And of course, this is the part where we get to inform you that you get to be a part of the conversation if you want to. If you want to chime in, feel free to give us a call. And of course, share your views, your points regarding this issue, what you think is happening, especially the issue around accountability, transparency in government. What are your state governors doing? Is it enough? And of course, what do you make of all of the measures that the federal and state governments are putting in place to ameliorate the pains that Nigerians are going through indeed? Senator, back to the question. You've been very critical about some of the voices that have come out to criticize the Tinubu administration regarding what is happening right now in the country. Give me your take on what is political about some of the narrative that we've seen as part of the analysis on the state of the nation, and how much of that is not trying to provide a solution but to muddy the waters.
Well, what we should put into perspective is that the government has unfolded an economic reform program, and it made the fundamental mistake of not being able to measure the gravity of the consequences of these reforms and the need to tackle it ahead of time. And today we are living that reality. Reforms have unfolded, and the consequences is in every home and every room in this country. So the question now is, where do we go from here? The expectations was that things will ease with time, but the pains are so excruciating And people are saying that, what are you doing?
Right.
I, as you see me here, I cannot count 10 people who have received any form of support from government at any level.
Okay.
As a result of the hardships which we are facing.
On that particular point, let's just segue into the phone lines to get a few takes from some of those people that are being targeted for some of these palliatives. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. Your name, please, and where you're calling from. Right, apparently we've lost our connection to that caller. Feel free to call back in. The number is shown on your TV screen, and we'd love to get your take on, the state of affairs in Nigeria today. Senator, back to the point around the palliatives. We've heard so much about it, including the recent pronouncement by the federal government of the release of 42,000 metric tons of free grains to Nigerians. And also, just some few hours ago, we've heard from the Minister of Finance, who talked about, some sort of conditional cash transfer to families who are vulnerable across the country. A lot of these pronouncements have been made public. However, as you suggested, not much to show for it on the ground if you are trying to look for, witnesses, so to say. Hello, Senator. I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Right. Okay.
Just
to piggyback off of the conversation of the
can I go on?
Palliatives and their failure to actually hit the target, which is the average Nigerian, the poor Nigerian who is vulnerable and looking for help. There isn't much of a proof to show that Nigerians are being impacted by what the federal government and the state government say they're doing with those palliative resources. What do you suppose we need to do around really addressing the gaps that exist within the system that stop some of these programs from achieving their main objective?
You see, when you have economic reform policies that comes with hardships and suffering, your intervention should be categorized into two: the short term and the long term. Sharing food and sharing palliatives will not address the problems of poverty in this country. And sharing money too is not going to address the problems of poverty in this country. But it has a short-term effect of alleviating the suffering. But what matters to a country and the reasons for reform is the long-term benefit, the long-term gain, and the long-term goals. So when you share food to people, you are simply addressing the problems of hunger for today. When you invest in agriculture, you are addressing the problems of food for this and the next generation. I have seen a governor, which is the governor of Niger State. He bought tractors from Jendi and he prioritized agriculture. I don't see reason why the northern governors, commissioners of agriculture, will have met by today and give each one of themselves targets. This is what you should deliver on soybeans. This is what you should deliver on corn. This is what you should deliver on maize. There should be articulation of what they should be able to achieve as far as agri is concerned. Now, that is a long term. But all this idea of buying food and sharing to people. Now, if you buy for today, people consume it. What of tomorrow? You still have to buy. Next tomorrow, you still have to buy. So what happens to it? And how many people can you feed? I have heard the governor of Lagos State, he's opening soup kitchens, soup spots in various parts of the state. You pay 1,000 people per local government. Now, if you feed 1,000 people per local government, how many people will sleep hungry?
Okay.
So you see, all this tokenism of palliative.
Okay. Just a moment, Senator. Let's get back to the phone lines because we appear to have some challenges with our connection. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program.
Good evening.
Your name, please, and where you're calling from.
Okay, I'm Emmanuel from Owerri.
Emmanuel from
Owerri.
Good to hear from you this evening, Emmanuel. Please go ahead.
I want to appreciate my senator because he's just hitting the nail on the head. Our problem in this country is we have visionless leaders, both at the president level and the state. Visionless. Why can you continue to do the same thing every time, expecting different results? This policy of sharing money, sharing food, Buhari did it for 8 years. Look at where we are. Why can't you address the core issue? Everything, the problem we have in Nigeria is corruption. Okay, the last bit of veteran affairs. Look at the corruption that EFCC observed in that ministry. Up till now, what have happened? The first thing I think tinubu have to do is to go after the last administration, probe them, recover our looted funds, then channel it to refineries, build more refineries, rehabilitate the ones that we have, so that we'll start producing fuel here. How can you say your crude oil use your own and go and report it back? I don't know what is wrong with our leader. They should sit down and think. Now he's going to.
I think we've lost our connection to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, are you still there?
I'm here, sir.
Yeah, go ahead. Just wrap it up in a few seconds. Go ahead.
Thanks so much. Now, what is plan to travel to
Okay, it appears the connection is unstable. But Emmanuel, I think we get the gist of your comments there. Senator, your reaction to his take. He seems to believe that the leadership is not one that is, channeled with a vision. But before you respond, let's get another call in. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Abubakar. I'm calling you from Niger State.
Abubakar from Niger State. Good to hear from you. Go ahead, please.
I just want to appreciate the senators.
Right. Anything you want to add, Abubakar?
What I want to add, I just appreciate the way he tried to make all the Nigerian people to understand the government is not making effort for every one of the Nigerians.
Right. Okay.
And what he's saying concerning the border, I like it. Because other countries, they are the ones that are supposed to close the borders. To say Nigeria, you are not going to buy anything from the borders.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for that concise take, Abubakar from Niger. Let's take one more caller before we segue to the senator to get some reactions to some of the comments that have been made there, especially with Emmanuel talking about the quality of political leadership. All right. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. Hello there. Good evening. Hello, good evening. Can you speak?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Welcome to the program. Your name, please, and where you're calling from.
My name is Elijah. I'm calling from Lagos.
Elijah from Lagos. Good to hear from you this evening. Go ahead.
I want to appreciate the senator. You have said it all.
Right.
You have said it all. This what he just said. He have said everything all. We love him because anybody who is saying truth, we believe on him.
Okay.
He's a good man.
Okay.
Continue with his work.
Thank you very much, Elijah, for the compliments and, of course, for sharing your thoughts with us. Senator, it apparently looks like you are in the clear with the majority of our callers this evening who seem to believe that you're echoing the thoughts, the frustrations of Nigerians regarding what is going on right now. But to segue to Emmanuel's thoughts about the quality of the political leadership, he seems to think that they're rather aimless, and that is why we keep repeating some of the mistakes we're making with regards to the corruption within the system itself. Hello, Senator.
Yes.
Yeah. Just go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Your reaction to their comments about, what is going on, especially Emmanuel.
Can you hear me?
The poor quality of leadership that Nigeria has been experiencing over the years, and how that is responsible for this vicious circle of poor performance, year after year.
Yes. Yeah, you see, We are where we are today because of what we did wrongly in the past or what we refused to do rightly in the past. If the past leaders of this country were able to invest our resources into our future, we could have gone beyond this point at this time. Now, you ask yourself, this is a country of 220 million people. From the north to the south, east to the west, there is no part of Nigeria that is not fertile. We have rivers in all the geopolitical zones. And in a country where there is river, where there is a good climatic condition, where there is a good soil condition for agriculture, and there is hunger in that country, then the problem is leadership. If you're talking of sugarcane in Cuba, we can cultivate sugarcane in Nigeria, but we prefer to import sugar from France. If you are talking of cotton in Egypt and Pakistan, we have the best fertile land for cotton production in Nigeria, but we prefer to import it. If you are talking of furniture, we import furniture when we have the woods, the mahogany to produce furniture. We import chocolate when we produce the cocoa here. So this is the kind of life we live over the years. We are importing petroleum products when we have abandoned our own refineries, and also we are extracting oil from Nigeria, take it to Europe, import petroleum products and share it in Nigeria. Now, we need a leadership that is determined, that is courageous to address this problem. If we need to suffer for our children to have easy life in the future, we have to do it. But we have to do it across all the ladder. It's not only the poor that will suffer. If you have a situation where people, the elite, the political ruling class, the political elite, are living luxuriously, comfortably, and it's only the poor that are suffering, then what are we? Now, let me be very, very clear with you. There is no person at a better position to unfold a painful economic reform than President Muhammadu Buhari in 2015. Buhari had the goodwill, had the support, has the mass-based support from the most poorest in the society than Tinubu had. I'm sure if Buhari could have removed that subsidy in 2015, 2017, he couldn't have had the opposition. You remember in the north, people are killed every day. People are kidnapped every day. For 6 to 7 to 8 years, you couldn't see northerners protesting against the killings of their kith and kings because the president comes from their own part of the country. Now, it's not the same thing. 8 years was wasted. Nothing was achieved. Now, President Tinubu has inherited a disappointed divorcee, one that has married and has left her husband, and as such, she is not ready to take patience for a ride again. So he has inherited a disappointed people. He has inherited a discontented people. He has inherited a failed people that have been failed. So this is what he has inherited, and that's why he cannot get up that patience Buhari had for 8 years. If we want to address the problems of hunger in this country, we have to invest in agriculture. Go from River Niger, right that it comes into Nigeria from Kebbi State to Niger State to Kogi State. The banks are not cultivated. You don't see mechanized farms along River Benue, mechanized farms along River Niger. Right. It is fallow. It is empty. We import food from Thailand, from Vietnam, from Bangladesh. We import food to Nigeria. Right. The banks of River Niger, there is no mechanized farming in this country. Okay. So how is the problem? The problem is not God. The problem is ourselves. Right. The problem is Nigerian leaders who have failed over the years.
Right. Couldn't agree with you more on that last point, Senator. Perhaps one of these days we'll get to hear your version of a glass half full of the Buhari administration. Perhaps we would be interested in getting to hear that aspect of the conversation. But for now, Senator, we're going to have to leave the conversation at this moment and anchor the program here. Thank you most kindly for giving us the time and for providing context as well as analysis to this very burning issue. Thank you for your time tonight. All right.
Thank you.
And on that note, we draw the curtains on this week's edition of the program. Sunday Politics returns next weekend on Saturday, live at 8 on Trust TV. On Sunday, I beg your pardon, live at 8 on Trust TV. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. From myself and the rest of the team, thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.